You know, I've heard a lot of critics crapping all over this movie leading up to this weekend. I don't know why. So a couple of things you should know before I get into this review, just so you know where I'm coming from. When I was a kid, Venom was my favorite character in the Marvel Universe, more so than Spider-Man or any of the X-Men or anyone. He had all the awesome qualities of Spider-Man, but was somehow better. Now that's not to say that I have any kind of a firm understanding of the character or comics in general. I am not really a comic guy, so I can't really talk that much about how good this was as an adaptation, although I do have some comments. And I can't really talk about the consistency with the character as it's supposed to be. That being said though, I can say that this is still a very fun movie. I went in with admittedly low expectations thinking, okay, maybe the characters are going to be rushed, or the pacing is going to be awful, or the cinematography is going to be a mess, or the story is going to be stupid, and no, it was actually pretty enjoyable. I mean, granted, the story's not anything exceptional. It's your basic two people come together to defeat greater evil, and they're butting heads along the way the entire time. You've seen this story before. It's like a buddy cop movie, but with rampant murder and violence. Okay, so the movie itself is about reporter Eddie Brock, who's down on his luck. His fiancée just broke up with him. He just lost his job with some newspaper group. He lost his apartment and now he's living somewhere in the slums of San Francisco. And he attributes a lot of this loss to some guy, the billionaire bad guy of the movie whose name I cannot remember. Well, one of the scientists working for the billionaire guy finds out that he really is twisted and evil. He actually brought a bunch of symbiotes from space back onto Earth, and now he's experimenting with people on them, which usually involves murdering homeless people. So she invites Eddie to come investigate the labs and find out firsthand what's going on. He does, but inadvertently bumps into the symbiote known as Venom. And if memory serves, the symbiote itself is not named Venom. That's what you get when you combine the symbiote with Eddie Brock. But in the movie, the symbiote itself is named Venom. I think that's wrong, but don't quote me on that. Comic nerds, let me know if that's true. From there, Eddie and Venom have to work together to take down the billionaire guy, and they discover that you can learn a little bit more just by working together. Also, Venom totally bites a dude's head off. So the story has been done, and quite a few times, but this was still fun because Eddie started off as kind of an asshole, but kind of a good person. It's actually nicely balanced in a lot of ways. See, he's an investigative reporter who goes after big name guys and tries to topple them. The problem is he kind of doesn't really care who gets damaged along the way. I mean, he picks up some confidential information through his girlfriend about the billionaire guy, and that's how she got fired, and then that's why they broke up. So he does things like that, but at the same time, he's very compassionate about the people around him. For example, he pays a homeless person $20 for a newspaper when the homeless person was only asking for $5. It's quick, but there are moments where you can see real character shining through. Now, when he does get to bond with Venom, he spends most of his time completely freaking out and acting panicked. And I can't say I blame him. That's a terrifying situation, especially when you see some of the fight scenes. Oh, they are fun. Initially, Venom does a lot of the fighting and Eddie's just kind of going along for the ride in kind of this weird semi-Venom arm thing where he just keeps shooting out jets of ink, grabbing enemies and tossing them around, things like that. But eventually he does get the Venom suit. And when that happens, when he and Venom start working together, oh, it is so satisfying. The CG does a pretty good job of making Venom look real enough. It's a little obvious that he's CG in a few scenes where he's like full body grabbing a guy, but those are few and far between. It's not that bad. Venom also gets a few quips in. Actually, most of the comedy comes from him interacting with Eddie. And for those of you wondering, we are not dealing with Venom, the villain. We are definitely dealing with Venom, the anti-hero. So I don't know how much of a turnoff that is for some hardcore fans, but he's definitely a guy who does the right thing. He just leaves a trail of bodies. And personally, I like anti-heroes more than regular heroes, so that works for me. The acting's not bad overall. Everyone does a pretty good job. I will say that Eddie's girlfriend starts off pretty flat. She does get better eventually. She apparently has a real reason to be in the movie, lengthwise. It's not just the initial kick you while you're down kind of thing, but she does improve after the first scene. So if you go and see this, just give her a few minutes. Now, for adaptation, from what I remember, and this is all old information, so this could have changed, I guess, comics retcon. Spider-Man is nowhere to be seen in this movie, so the original origin story with Venom, originally starting out with Peter Parker and then moving on to Eddie Brock and then becoming a villain for Spider-Man, none of that is here. This is very much a standalone movie. Venom gets his very own separate origin story. I can understand why some purists might not like that, because Venom is kind of like the anti-Spider-Man, where he's like his foil in so many ways. And that's a fair criticism, I think, if you're looking at it from an adaptation point of view. I actually had a friend who I think described this pretty well. If you go into this looking at it from a comic book fan's perspective, you're going to be disappointed by a few things. If you're going in just to see it as an action movie, you're probably going to have a really good time. And me? I had a good time. Especially during the final fight. It was absolutely chaotic, but appropriately so. You'll have to see the movie to find out what I'm talking about. The characters were fun, the action was fun, the CG was good. The cinematography after a few select action scenes were basic. I cannot remember any of the music except for like the one starting credits song by Eminem. And I also can't remember the main villain's name, so he certainly stood out. I mean, they only said his name like 24 times. Oh, but definitely, stick around for the mid-credits scene. It's good. And there is a post-credit scene. It's not related to the movie, but it's not bad. Probably Sony being desperate, but considering their history, I'm not surprised. So 4 out of 5, good action movie. Go check it out.